The guard saw two black boys dripping rainwater onto the marble floor, and reached for the button under the desk, before he saw the wallet in their hands. "Get out," he said. "This lobby is private." The taller twin did not move. He was 19, hungry enough that his cheekbones had sharpened, with a split in one sneaker, and rain running off the edge of his hood. "Sir," he said, "we found this outside." I said, "Move." "There is money in it," the other twin said. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the lobby like a clean wire. "A lot of money." The guard finally looked down. The wallet was black calfskin, heavy, soaked at the corners, held in both hands like it might explode if the boy squeezed too hard. "How much?" the guard asked. $18,000, the taller one said. "Every bill's still there." The guard stared at them, then at the wallet, then at the security camera above the desk, as if the building itself might tell him what to believe. "You two sleep outside, and you brought back $18,000. The quiet twin lifted his eyes. "We have not eaten since yesterday morning," he said. But hungry is not the same thing as thief. That was the first sentence that made someone in the lobby go still. The second came 1 minute later, after the guard called upstairs, listened, straightened his back, and looked at the boys the way people look when they realize they have been wrong in public. 64th floor, he said. "Mr. Vale wants to see you himself." Upstairs, Everett Vale stood in an office made of glass and silence, waiting for the elevator doors to open. He was worth more than most cities could spend in a year. He owned apartment towers in 4 countries, and hotels on 3 coasts, but for 2 years he had carried around a wallet his dead daughter had bought for him, from a sidewalk vendor, because she said no man who owned 27 buildings should keep using a rubber band for cash. When the doors opened, 2 rain-soaked boys stepped out. One held out the wallet with both hands. The other kept one hand on his brother's sleeve, not hiding behind him, just staying close enough to remind the world there were 2 of them. Everett took the wallet, and felt the old leather under his thumb. Inside, behind the money, behind the cards, in the little pocket no stranger should ever have noticed, was a folded square of paper, with his daughter's handwriting on it. "For Dad, who always carries too much, and says too little. Love, Nora." Everett Vale had not cried in 2 years. Not at the hospital. Not at the funeral. Not when his wife moved out, because she said the grief had turned him into a house with no doors. Not once. But now, with 2 homeless 19-year-old twins standing in front of him, both of them thin, soaked, exhausted, and honest enough to return the one thing they could have sold to survive, something in him cracked. What he did next did not happen because he was generous. It happened because, for the first time in 2 years, he felt ashamed of how much he owned, and how little he had seen. Their names were Marcus and Micah Turner. Marcus had been born 8 minutes before Micah and had used those 8 minutes his whole life like a job title. He was the one who talked to strangers, negotiated with diner owners, watched the street before they crossed, and slept nearest the open side of whatever shelter they had made for the night. Micah was quieter, not weaker. Quiet on Micah was not fear. It was concentration. He noticed things other people stepped over. Broken locks. Bus schedules. Which public bathrooms stayed open past 10. Which library computers had headphones that worked. Which people looked through you and which people looked away, because looking would cost them something. For 9 months they had slept below the expressway at the edge of the river, in a strip of dry concrete between a support pillar and a chain-link fence. It was not home, but they had made rules there, and rules can make almost anything survivable for a while. Shoes stayed on after dark. Food got split exactly in half, unless one of them was sick. Cash went in the blue vitamin bottle under the loose brick. The emergency 20 was never touched, unless both agreed. The photograph of their mother stayed wrapped in plastic, always, even on clear nights, because rain has a way of arriving, after hope does. Their mother's name was Denise Turner. She had cleaned hotel rooms, until her knees swelled, cleaned office bathrooms, until her hands cracked, then worked overnight at a medical supply warehouse, where the air smelled faintly of bleach and metal dust. She never had much money, but she had a way of making a bare table feel like a place people belong. She said grace even when dinner was canned soup stretched with rice. She ironed the boys' shirts for school, with a towel over the kitchen counter, because the ironing board had broken, and nobody had room in the budget for another one. She died in late November, 3 weeks after a cough became a diagnosis, and 2 days after a hospital social worker said they would discuss options in the morning. By morning, there was no more Denise Turner to discuss them with. Her last words were not dramatic. Real last words rarely are. She looked at Marcus, then at Micah, and whispered, "Do not let this world make you mean." Marcus had carried that sentence like a stone in his coat pocket ever since. Micah carried it differently. He wrote it on the first page of the notebook he kept in a freezer bag, the notebook where he sketched app screens and copied bits of code from library books, because the public computers logged him out after 45 minutes, and 45 minutes was never enough. After Denise died, the twins found out how quickly a life can fall apart, when every safety net has a hole exactly where your foot lands. They were 19, too old for foster care, too broke for rent, too young for landlords, who wanted credit history, guarantors, pay stubs, deposits, references, and proof that poverty would not inconvenience them. A caseworker gave them phone numbers. The phone numbers gave them recordings. The recordings gave them waitlists. The waitlists gave them winter. So Marcus washed dishes at a soul food place on Bergen Street for cash. The owner, Miss Althea, called it side help, because calling it a job would have required forms she did not have time to fight over. She paid him what she could, fed him what she could, and pretended not to notice when he wrapped half his plate before taking a bite. Micah spent his days at the public library. He had taught himself Python from a book with 3 missing chapters, and JavaScript from videos he watched, with the volume low so nobody complained. He had built 2 small tools. One mapped free meals, bathrooms, and warming centers from public data that was never in one place. The other helped people calculate whether a paycheck would make them lose benefits before it made them safe. Nobody important had seen them. Nobody had funded them. But every line of code made Micah feel, briefly, like the world was a problem he could solve instead of a wall he kept hitting. Everett Vale's world had no visible walls. His company, Vale Urban Group, occupied the top 14 floors of a tower on Madison Avenue. The private elevator opened into a corridor lined with stones so pale it looked untouched by weather. Assistants spoke softly. Glass doors opened without squeaking. Coffee appeared before anyone asked for it. People in that building used words like assets, portfolio, repositioning, and opportunity, words smooth enough to hide the human beings underneath them. Everett had built the company from one inherited parking lot and a gift for seeing what land would be worth before anyone else did. By 63, he had more money than he could reasonably defend as necessary and more power than most people understood power could be. Reporters called him disciplined. Rivals called him cold. His board called him irreplaceable. His daughter, Nora, had called him impossible and kissed the top of his head when she said it. Nora had been 24 when she died. Not in a scandal. Not in a headline. Just a late train, a slick platform, a fall no one reached in time to stop. The kind of accident that leaves the living with nowhere to put their anger. Everett had tried putting it into work. He bought 3 buildings the month after the funeral. Sold 2. Fired a division head for using the phrase moving on in a meeting. He stopped going home before midnight. He stopped answering friends. His wife, Celia, stayed for 11 months, then set a mug down in front of him one morning and said, "I cannot be married to a locked room." He signed the separation papers, without reading the second page. The only thing he did not let go of was the wallet. Nora had bought it for him, from a street vendor, after brunch one Sunday, laughing because the richest man she knew kept cash folded in a money clip like a retired bookie. The wallet had cost $40. He had tried to tell her the stitching was uneven. She had rolled her eyes, and made him move everything into it right there on the sidewalk. Then she tore a page from her little sketchbook, wrote the note, folded it, and slid it behind his license. "You lose everything, Dad," she said. "Try not to lose this." For 2 years he did not. Then, on a wet Tuesday morning, somewhere between his car and a meeting with bankers he did not care about, Everett Vale lost the last thing his daughter had touched. Marcus found it beside a curb outside a closed bakery. At first, he thought it was a glove. Rain had darkened the leather, and it lay half under a metal newspaper box, nearly invisible in the gutter shadow. He bent because people drop coins, and coins buy bananas, when nothing else does. Then his fingers closed around leather instead of metal. He knew before he opened it that it belonged to someone rich. Per wallets are thin. This one had weight. Under the bakery awning, with rain ticking above his head, Marcus opened it and saw hundreds. Not one or two tucked behind a debit card for emergencies. Stacks. $100 bills folded behind a silver clip. He counted because shock made him stupid, and counting gave his hands something to do. $18,000. He counted again. Still 18,000. Behind the cash were black credit cards, a driver's license, and a company ID, with a man's name embossed in clean type. Everett J. Vale. Marcus shut the wallet hard, as if money could look back at him. His first thought was not noble. That is important. Hunger does not make saints. It makes pictures. A room with heat. Micah sleeping in a bed instead of on cardboard. A new coat. Antibiotics when one of them got sick. A laptop Micah would not have to leave at closing time. A small table with 2 chairs. Groceries that did not come from a trash bag. A door that locked from the inside. $18,000 was not fortune money to Everett Vale. It was not even inconvenience money. But to Marcus and Micah Turner, it was the difference between surviving and starting. Marcus stood under that awning for a long minute, hearing rain and traffic, and his mother's voice. "Do not let this world make you mean." He walked back to the bridge. Micah looked up from his notebook when Marcus ducked under the tarp. He saw his brother's face, and closed the notebook, before asking anything. Marcus opened the wallet between them. For once, Micah did not speak. He looked at the cash, then at the license, then at Marcus. The quiet under the overpass changed. It became heavy, almost accusing. "We could disappear," Marcus said. Micah nodded once. Not agreement. "Math. We could be warm tonight," Marcus said. Micah looked at the photograph of their mother wrapped in plastic on the plywood shelf. Marcus hated him for looking there first, and loved him for it. Micah finally said, "If we keep it, we have to become the kind of people who kept it." That was all. Marcus sat down on the damp concrete. He pressed the heels of his hands into his eyes until color sparked behind them. He wanted to curse. He wanted to tell Micah that principle did not fill a stomach, that their mother was gone, that the world had already been mean enough to them, without their help. But the trouble with being raised well is that even when the person who raised you dies, they keep turning up at the worst possible moments. After a while he stood. "All right," he said. "Let us go give a billionaire his grocery money back." Micah almost smiled. It was the first almost smile Marcus had seen in 3 days. They found the address from the company ID, and spent their last subway fare getting to Madison Avenue. By the time they reached the tower, the rain had come harder. Marcus's hoodie was soaked through. Micah's notebook was safe in its plastic bag under his shirt. They walked into the lobby, leaving small dark marks on the white marble, and every head turned, as if the floor itself had objected. That was where the guard told them to leave. His name tag said B. Hanley. He was not cruel in the spectacular way of villains. Most people are not. He was ordinary, with authority, which can be worse. He saw torn clothes, wet hair, brown skin, hunger, and a wallet, and his mind arranged the facts in the laziest possible order. Get out, he said. Marcus tried to explain. Hanley cut him off twice. Micah lifted the wallet. Hanley told him to put it down. Marcus said there was money inside. Hanley asked how much. 18,000, Marcus said, and the lobby changed. Suspicion did not leave Hanley's face. It merely became less certain. He called upstairs. While he waited, two executives crossed the lobby, and slowed just enough to see the show. A woman in a cream coat pulled her purse closer to her body, then looked embarrassed only, after Marcus noticed. Micah stared at the waterfall built into the far wall, watching clean water fall forever for no reason at all. Then Hanley hung up. 64th floor, he said. The elevator was so quiet Marcus could hear water dripping from his sleeve onto the polished floor. Neither twin touched the walls. The numbers climbed faster than any elevator they had ever ridden. Micah closed his eyes at 42, opened them at 59, and whispered, "This building has more bathrooms than our shelter list had beds." Marcus did not laugh, because it was not funny. When the doors opened, a woman in her 50s was waiting. Her name was Ruth Bell, and she had been Everett Vale's chief of staff for 17 years, which meant she had seen billion-dollar negotiations, mayoral tantrums, hostile takeovers, and Everett on the morning after Nora died. She knew the wallet before she knew the boys. Her hand went to her mouth, just briefly. "Mr. Vale is waiting," she said. Everett's office looked out over the city like a place built for a man who needed distance in order to breathe. He stood behind his desk when they entered, silver hair neat, shirt cuffs perfect, face held in the careful stillness rich men learn, because people are always trying to read them for weather. Marcus stepped forward and held out the wallet. "We found it outside, sir," he said. "We counted the cash, so nobody could say we took any. It is all there." Everett took it. For a moment, he did not open it. He looked at Marcus's hands. The nails were clean despite everything. The knuckles were red from cold. Then he looked at Micah, at the way the quieter twin held himself half a step behind his brother, but missed nothing in the room. Everett opened the wallet. Cash. Cards. License. Then the note. Ruth turned away when she saw his face. She knew what was coming before Everett did. He read the note once. Then again. His mouth tightened, but his eyes filled. He looked at the boys, and for the first time in 2 years, Everett Vale did not know what role to play. Not founder. Not chairman. Not grieving father made of granite. Just a man holding the last joke his daughter had ever played on him, returned by 2 boys, who had every reason to choose themselves, and had not. "You could have kept this," he said. Marcus nodded. "Yes, sir." "Why did you not?" "Because it was yours." "That is not an answer." "It is $18,000. Micah spoke then. "To you, maybe?" Everett looked at him. Micah swallowed, but he did not take the sentence back. "To us, it is beds, food, coats, a laptop, maybe school. We know what it is worth. We brought it anyway." Something passed across Everett's face, pain and respect braided, so tightly it was hard to tell which was which. He opened a drawer and took out an envelope. Ruth stiffened. She knew Everett. His first instinct was always to solve, with money, quickly, cleanly, from a distance. "There is $5,000 in here," he said. "Take it." Marcus did not look at the envelope for long. "No, thank you." Everett blinked. We did not bring it for a reward, Marcus said. Pride, Everett said, and there was a little sharpness in it, because rich men often mistake refusal for insult. No, sir, Marcus answered. Training. Everett slowly set the envelope down. Who trained you? Our mother, Micah said. The room became quiet in a different way. Ruth asked if they wanted coffee. Marcus said no automatically. Micah said yes before Marcus could stop him. Ruth brought coffee, sandwiches, and towels without making a ceremony out of it. That was the first kindness. Not the food. The lack of performance. They told him very little. Their names. Their mother's death. The bridge only, after Everett asked, where he could have someone drive them. Marcus tried to soften it by saying by the river, but Micah, who had no gift for making hard things comfortable, said under the expressway. Everett's hand closed around Nora's wallet. Under the expressway, he repeated. Yes, sir. That afternoon, after the twins left in a car Ruth insisted on arranging, Everett cancelled 4 meetings, and hired a private investigator named Jana Ortiz. Not to expose them. To verify before he stepped into their lives, with the full weight of his guilt and money. He told himself it was caution. Ruth told him, very gently, that caution and fear often wear the same suit. The report came back 48 hours later. Denise Turner, deceased, age 44. Employment history, hotel housekeeping, office cleaning, warehouse night shift. No life insurance. No surviving relatives with stable housing. Marcus Turner, informal dishwashing work, reliable, paid cash. Micah Turner, self-taught programmer using public library computers. Housing assistance application submitted. Waitlist number 389. Emergency shelter referrals unsuccessful. Public benefits interrupted, because mail was sent to an address they no longer had access to. High school records strong. No criminal history. No substance abuse. No violence. No miracle, no secret, no hidden sponsor. Just 2 young men doing everything right in circumstances built to punish them anyway. On page 9 was the thing that made Everett sit down. Jana had attached screenshots of Micah's apps. The design was simple, almost bare, but the thinking was extraordinary. The meal map worked offline, after loading once, because Micah understood that people without homes often did not have data. The benefits calculator used plain language, not government jargon. It warned users when a raise might threaten food support, and showed nearby legal aid groups that could help. It was not pretty in the way venture capital liked pretty. It was useful, which is harder. At the bottom of the page Jana had written one sentence. This kid is building tools for a world that has never built one for him. Everett read that sentence 3 times. Then he drove to the bridge. He did not take a driver. He did not call the press. He parked 2 blocks away, and stood above the expressway looking down, through the fence at the place where the twins slept. He saw the tarp. The water bottles. The cardboard. The plastic-wrapped photograph. The careful order of people refusing to become chaos just because life had handed them chaos. For the first time, since Nora died, Everett cried for someone whose pain was not his own. The next evening, Ruth called Marcus's borrowed phone and invited the twins to dinner. Marcus nearly said no. He did not trust dinners with rich people. A meal can be a hook if the person offering it believes hunger gives them the right to pull. But Micah said we should hear him out. So they went. Everett did not host them in the penthouse on Park Avenue. He hosted them in Nora's old apartment, a modest place in Brooklyn she had kept, because she said Manhattan made people confuse height with importance. He had not been there since she died. Ruth had opened the windows that morning. The room smelled faintly of dust, lemon cleaner, and memory. Dinner was roast chicken, rice, greens, bread, and 3 kinds of confusion at the table, because Marcus did not know whether to wait, Micah did not know which glass was his, and Everett did not know how to begin. Finally, Everett picked up a piece of chicken, with his hand. Ruth, seated at the end of the table, raised one eyebrow. Everett ignored her and took a bite. Micah stared. Micah looked down quickly, but not before Everett saw the corner of his mouth move. My daughter hated formal dinners, Everett said. She said forks were just tiny fences. That was the first time he said Nora's name to them. After dinner, he made the offer. Not a reward, he said. Not charity. A contract, if you need that word. A furnished 2-bedroom apartment, in your names. Tuition for any program you choose. Paid work at Vale Urban Group, if you want it. Mentors. Health insurance. Legal help getting your benefits record repaired. You owe me honesty, effort, and the right to disappear from your life if I ever treat you like a project instead of people. Marcus leaned back, as if the offer had physically pushed him. We cannot take that. You can. No. That is too much. Everett nodded. I know. Then why say it like it is simple? Because money is simple, Everett said. People are not. Micah looked at him carefully. Why us? Everett had prepared answers. Because of your integrity. Because of your potential. Because the foundation can structure it responsibly. All true. All insufficient. Because my daughter thought I had too much money, and not enough courage, he said. Because you returned the last thing she gave me. Because I looked at where you sleep, and realized I have spent my life buying buildings, without asking who gets locked outside them. Because you do not need a savior. You need a door that should have been there already. Marcus's face changed when he heard that. Not softened. Not yet. But something lowered. We would pay you back, he said. Everett shook his head. Marcus stood. Then no. The room froze. Marcus, Micah said. No, Marcus repeated, but his voice shook now. Everybody wants to feel good giving poor people something. Then later they want gratitude forever. They want the story. They want the picture. They want to say, look what I did. If we take this, how do we know we still belong to ourselves? Everett did not answer quickly, and because he did not answer quickly, Marcus stayed. Finally Everett said, put it in writing. What? The boundaries. No press without your permission. No photographs. No speeches using your names. No conditions about affection, family, loyalty, or public gratitude. If you work at my company, you get paid market rate and report to someone other than me. If you go to school, your grades are yours. If you leave, the apartment stays paid through the year. You will never have to perform rescue to keep a roof. Ruth looked at Everett with something like pride. Micah said, and the app? Everett turned to him. My code stays mine, Micah said. If your company helps me build it, there is a licensing agreement, not ownership. For the first time, Everett smiled. You definitely need a lawyer. Can you pay for one? Micah asked. Yes. One that does not work for you. The smile deepened. Especially one that does not work for me. That was how it began. Not with adoption papers. Not with a billionaire sweeping 2 boys into a fairy tale. It began with a contract, a lawyer, 3 signatures, and Marcus reading every page twice, while Micah asked questions about intellectual property that made Everett's general counsel blink. The apartment was in Brooklyn, not Manhattan. 2 bedrooms, clean, safe, with heat that clanked through the pipes, and a kitchen window facing a brick wall. To the twins, it was a palace. The first night, either slept in the beds. They sat on the living room floor, with the lights on, until sunrise, because after months under an expressway, silence felt suspicious. Marcus enrolled in community college first, then transferred into a business program. Micah enrolled in software engineering. Both worked part-time at Vale Urban, though not on any team Everett controlled. Marcus started in tenant services, where he learned how often a fee becomes an eviction notice, when nobody in power returns a call. Micah joined the Civic Technology Division, which at the time was 2 board analysts, and a database nobody trusted. People talked. Of course they did. A leaked blog post turned them into a headline within a month. Homeless twins return billionaire's wallet, receive new life. The comments were a sewer with occasional flowers. Angel boys. Scam. Publicity stunt. Why do they get help and not others? Billionaire guilt purchase. Nobody returns that much money unless cameras are involved. Marcus read too many of them and stopped eating dinner. At school, a student in a finance seminar smirked and said some people build resumes. Some people find wallets. Marcus did not hit him. That mattered because he wanted to. That night he packed a bag. He folded each shirt, with military care, zipped the bag, and sat beside it until Micah came home from the computer lab. Micah looked at the bag. Then he took their mother's photograph from the shelf and set it on the floor between them. Do not do that, Marcus said. Do what? Bring her into this. Micah sat cross-legged, the way he used to under the bridge. She is already in this. Marcus put his head in his hands. I cannot be somebody's headline for the rest of my life. Then do not be, Micah said. Be her son. Marcus cried then. Not loudly. Not long. But enough. The next morning, Everett arrived with breakfast sandwiches and no assistant. Marcus opened the door and looked annoyed, which relieved Everett more than welcome would have. I heard, Everett said. Marcus stepped aside. They ate at the small kitchen table. Micah pretended to debug code at the counter and listened to every word. Everett told Marcus about the 11 days after Nora died, when he did not leave his bedroom. How Ruth threatened to call an ambulance. How Celia stood in the doorway crying, asking him to come back to the living. How he stayed, because grief had convinced him that leaving the room would mean leaving Nora behind. Running feels like control, Everett said. Sometimes it is just fear, with its shoes on. Marcus stared at his sandwich. Those people do not know you, Everett continued. They know a headline. Headlines are cheap. You are expensive. Not because I spent money. Because your mother spent a lifetime building you. Do not let strangers discount her work. Marcus did not answer. But after Everett left, he unpacked the bag. 2 years passed. Micah's meal map became Turntable, a free platform that connected shelters, kitchens, clinics, charging stations, public bathrooms, legal aid offices, and emergency beds in real time. It worked by text message for people without smartphones. It translated into 6 languages. It let outreach workers update availability, without logging into a government portal designed by someone who had never stood in rain with a dead phone. Vale Urban funded it. Micah owned it. That was in the contract. Marcus built the Doorway Fund, not a charity gala machine, but a practical housing bridge for young adults aged 18 to 24, who had aged out, been pushed out, or simply been missed. Deposits. Short-term rent. ID replacement. Work clothes. Metro cards. Application fees. The small amounts that decide whether a person gets a chance or another night outside. He hired Miss Althea to run the food partnership program. She told Everett his coffee tasted like regret and replaced it with something stronger. Everett changed more slowly. Real change is rude that way. He did not become saintly. He still snapped in meetings. He still preferred control. He still sometimes reached for his checkbook, when listening would have served better. But he sold 3 luxury properties, and used the proceeds to create the Nora Vale Housing Lab, which focused on buildings, with units reserved for young adults leaving homelessness. He testified at city hearings and for the first time in his career admitted that developers had helped create a city where working people could vanish between paychecks. Ruth said Nora would have called him dramatic, then hugged him, where no one could see. On the second anniversary of the day they returned the wallet, Everett asked Marcus and Micah to meet him at the old bridge. Both brothers hated the idea. That is the point, Everett said. They arrived at dusk. The expressway roared overhead. The concrete still smelled like diesel after rain. The chain-link fence had been repaired. Their old corner was empty now except for a faded strip of cardboard pressed flat by weather. A small group waited nearby. Ruth, Miss Althea, Micah's lawyer, Marcus's advisor, a city housing director, who looked uncomfortable in the cold. No cameras. Marcus checked. Everett stood beside a temporary sign covered with a black cloth. I lost the wallet here, he said. Marcus frowned. Not here. Near enough, Everett said. Then he looked at both of them. And you found something heavier than money. He pulled the cloth away. The sign showed the rendering of a building plan for the vacant lot across from the overpass. 5 stories. Brick. Warm windows. A ground-floor kitchen. A computer lab. Counseling rooms. 28 transitional apartments for young adults, with no place to go. At the top were the words Denise Turner House. Marcus stopped breathing. Micah stepped backward once, as if the name had reached out and touched him. Everett spoke carefully. The land is purchased. The funding is secured for 10 years. The board has voting seats for both of you, and for residents. Not symbolic seats. Real ones? If you hate the design, change it. If you hate the name, we change that too. Marcus tried to speak and failed. Micah did speak. His voice broke on the first word. Do not change the name. Everett nodded. There is one more thing, he said. He took out the wallet. Nora's wallet. The leather had been repaired, but the old crease remained. He opened it and removed the folded note. For Dad, who always carries too much and says too little. Love, Nora. I carried this because I thought it was the last thing my daughter gave me, Everett said. I was wrong. The last thing she gave me was the chance to become someone she would still recognize. He placed the wallet in Marcus's hands. Marcus tried to give it back immediately. Everett closed his fingers around it. Not the note, Everett said. The note stays with me. But the wallet belongs in the house, when it opens. Not as a rich man's lost property. As proof that honesty should not have to be rewarded to matter, but sometimes it should be allowed to build something. Micah was crying openly now. Marcus held himself still for 3 seconds, maybe 4, and then he folded in half like the strength had gone out of his bones. Everett stepped toward him, stopped, waited for permission, and Marcus gave it by reaching first. They stood under the expressway, the billionaire, the twins, the people who had helped, the city rushing overhead, without noticing, and for a moment the place, that had once held their lowest nights, held something else. 3 years after that, Denise Turner House opened its doors. The first resident was a 19-year-old named Jalen, who arrived with 1 backpack, 2 bus tickets, and a grocery bag full of paperwork. Marcus met him at the front desk. Not a volunteer. Not a photo opportunity. The director. He handed Jalen a key and said, "This opens your room. Nobody goes in without your permission." Jalen stared at the key until his eyes filled. Micah's lab occupied the 2nd floor. Young people used the computers there to apply for jobs, write resumes, find benefits, learn coding, call family, or simply sit somewhere warm, without being asked to buy anything. Turntable ran on a screen near the door, updating shelter beds across the city in real time. Every time a bed opened, a small green light appeared. Micah still watched those lights like each one was personal. Everett did not put his name on the building. He visited on Thursdays, with sandwiches and terrible coffee, until Miss Althea banned him from the coffee machine. He kept Nora's note framed in his office, beside a photograph of Denise Turner House on opening day. In the picture, Marcus was trying not to cry, Micah was not trying at all, Ruth was laughing, and Everett was looking slightly off camera at something no one else had noticed. Maybe Nora. Maybe Denise. Maybe just the impossible sight of a door, where once there had only been concrete. The wallet sat in a glass case in the lobby of Denise Turner House. Beside it was no amount of money, no check, no headline. Just a small card with 3 sentences. Found in the rain. Returned with nothing missing. Used to open more than one door. And below that, in Denise Turner's handwriting, copied from Micah's notebook, the words her sons had lived by, before anyone applauded them for it. Do not let this world make you mean. Here is the thing worth carrying with you. Integrity is easy to praise, after it becomes a story. It is much harder to respect, when it walks into your lobby wet, hungry, and wearing shoes with holes in them. If you need a lesson, from Marcus and Micah Turner, do not make it only that poor people can be honest. That lesson is too small, and it asks too little of the rest of us. Make it this. Sometimes the person returning what you lost is also showing you what you have failed to see. And if you are lucky, if you are brave enough not to hide behind suspicion or pity, that moment can become a door, not just for them, but for everyone who comes after. This story is a work of fiction. Every event, character, conversation, company, institution, and situation in this narrative is entirely imaginary, created for storytelling, and to explore dignity, fairness, courage, and the human cost of prejudice. Nothing here represents actual events, or should be read as fact. If this story moved you, subscribe, share it with one person who still believes kindness is weakness, and tell me in the comments what you would have done if you found a wallet that could have changed your life overnight.